There are whispers, echoes beneath the soil of time. Not merely the kind that crumble under the boots of archaeologists, but something older, infinitely older. A memory buried in stone, encoded in myth, etched into sacred geometry, and pulsing quietly beneath our feet like a forgotten heartbeat. What if everything we've been taught about the origin of civilization is only a faint shadow of the truth? What if humanity's true genesis, our authentic history, has been buried beneath cataclysm, rewritten by conquerors, and deliberately veiled by forces that benefit from our collective amnesia? Tonight, we ask a question that may reshape our understanding of reality itself. Did a super-civilization once thrive on Earth, far older, more advanced, and more spiritually evolved than any society we've known? Not just technologically superior, but metaphysically awakened. A civilization capable of bending sound into form, of moving mountains through resonance, and of communing with the earth as a conscious, living being. Their monuments were not merely architectural wonders, they were vibrational libraries, encoded messages meant to speak across time, to those with the inner ears to hear. But something happened. A great fall. A flood of fire, or water, or consciousness, and the world forgot. Or perhaps more disturbingly, was made to forget. The clues still linger, forbidden maps, ancient ruins that defy explanation, mythologies dismissed as allegory but pulsing with hidden truths. Names like Atlantis and Lemuria are not just the stuff of fantasy, they are echoes of an older reality, half-remembered and encoded in stone. Even places like Göbekli Tepe, buried deliberately beneath tons of earth, whisper of a forgotten wisdom the modern world cannot, or dares not, face. This journey is not merely about lost stones and sunken cities. It is about us. Our origins. Our untapped potential. And the sacred knowledge that still lives in the depths of our DNA, waiting to be reawakened. We will explore what these ancient cultures knew about the soul, the cosmos, and the unseen forces shaping reality, wisdom that may hold the key to our collective awakening. So take a breath. Open your inner eye. And prepare to step beyond the veil. Because if the whispers are true, then Earth's lost super-civilization was never truly lost, only concealed. And now, it is calling us home. Throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen like the breath of the earth itself. From the pyramids of Egypt to the ziggurats of Mesopotamia, from the temples of Angkor Wat to the mysterious stone heads of Easter Island, we are surrounded by architectural enigmas, structures so complex and precise, they defy the technological capabilities of the societies to which mainstream history has assigned them. But what if these are not the beginnings of civilization, as we've been taught, but rather echoes of something far older, fragments of a golden age whose memory has been shattered by time and cataclysm? Ancient records and oral traditions from every corner of the world speak of a time when the gods walked among men, when wisdom flowed freely, and when the stars were not just lights in the sky, but portals, gateways to other realms of consciousness. The Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, beings of great power who descended from the heavens to instruct mankind. The Hindus told of vast yugas, cosmic ages through which humanity rises and falls. In Mesoamerica, the Maya wrote of cycles of destruction and rebirth, while in Egypt, Thoth, the god of wisdom, was said to have preserved sacred knowledge from before the Great Flood. This idea of a lost, advanced civilization is not just myth, it's a recurring theme, encoded in the spiritual DNA of our planet. Plato, one of the most revered philosophers of the ancient world, described in great detail the story of Atlantis, a magnificent society that had reached the peak of its spiritual and technological prowess before succumbing to moral decay and being swallowed by the sea. He did not present this story as fiction, but as a historical account handed down from Egyptian priests. And the Egyptian priests themselves claimed their civilization was but a remnant, an heir to an even older world destroyed by fire and flood. But why would such knowledge be hidden? Why would the story of our truest beginnings be buried beneath layers of distortion and denial? Some say it was the cataclysms, great floods, volcanic eruptions, and polar shifts, that wiped clean the memory of a world that had reached too far, too fast. Others believe there was a deliberate suppression of truth, a manipulation of history by forces who understood that power is maintained not by brute strength, but by control of the narrative. If humanity were to remember its divine origins and the immense spiritual power it once wielded, it would no longer be so easily ruled. There is an esoteric principle echoed in Hermetic philosophy: as above, so below, as within, so without. It suggests that all truths are reflected across planes: physical, mental, spiritual. If we apply this to our forgotten past, it becomes clear that the ruins left behind are not just physical, they are mirrors of a spiritual ruin, a collective amnesia. Humanity, in forgetting its origins, also forgot its purpose, its connection to the cosmos, and the sacredness of life itself. The temples became tombs, the rituals became superstition, and the living earth became a resource to be mined rather than a consciousness to be honored. But there have always been guardians of this ancient wisdom: mystics, shamans, monks, and sages who have preserved fragments of the old ways. In hidden monasteries, remote caves, and secret societies, whispers of the old world have been kept alive. The knowledge of energy grids, ley lines, sacred sound, and cosmic alignment was never truly lost. It was simply veiled, awaiting the day when humanity would be ready to remember. And perhaps that day is near. As science begins to merge with spirituality, and as forgotten ruins emerge from jungles and ocean floors, we find ourselves standing at the threshold of remembrance. This is more than a historical curiosity. It is a philosophical mirror, a challenge to awaken. Because if such a civilization once existed, then so too did its understanding of consciousness, energy, and universal law. And if we are its descendants, then their legacy lives within us, dormant but never extinguished. If this lost super-civilization truly existed, then what exactly made it super? Was it merely advanced technology, machines and metals, cities and flight, or was it something far more elusive, something modern minds barely grasp: consciousness as a tool, and spirit as the foundation of civilization itself? Evidence is mounting that their power did not stem from industrial dominance, but from an intimate understanding of universal laws, resonance, frequency, geometry, and the inner alignment between mind, body, and cosmos. Across continents, we find structures that speak a silent language: megaliths aligned perfectly with solstices and equinoxes, pyramids tuned to the vibrational frequencies of the earth, temples built in golden ratios that mirror the structure of galaxies and DNA alike. How did these ancient builders, supposedly primitive, harness such profound precision? Sites like Göbekli Tepe, estimated to be over 12,000 years old, shatter our conventional timelines and show an extraordinary leap in organization and cosmological knowledge. This temple, deliberately buried by its creators, was not the work of wandering hunter-gatherers, but of a people who understood something we no longer do, that every stone, every symbol, every celestial alignment was part of a greater spiritual technology. And the myths that surround these civilizations are not simply stories, they are encrypted transmissions. Take, for instance, the recurring motif of the Great Flood. Found in the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, the Bible's account of Noah, Hindu texts of Manu, and even in Native American legends, this flood was not merely a natural disaster, it was a reset. A cleansing of a once great people who had fallen out of harmony with the laws of nature and spirit. The survivors, those with the wisdom to preserve the sacred knowledge, became the seed-bearers of a new era, scattering fragments of truth across the globe in symbolic forms, serpent cults, solar deities, feathered serpents, cosmic eggs. These archetypes show up again and again, always pointing toward the stars, the cycles of time, and the journey of the soul. The ancients did not divide the world into science and spirituality as we do today, they lived in the integration of both. Their language was vibrational. Their math, sacred. Their cities, living mandalas designed to align human consciousness with the rhythms of the cosmos. This is where we begin to understand what made this civilization unlike any we've ever known. Imagine a society where architecture heals, where sound is used not only to build but to awaken consciousness. Where language is rooted in frequency, and where leadership is not political, but initiatory, granted only to those who have mastered themselves and understood the sacred balance of all things. This was not just an advanced society. It was a harmonic civilization, one that knew the earth not as a resource, but as a sentient being, a divine partner in the evolution of human spirit. Even the maps that have survived hint at a time when the world looked very different. The Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 using much older source materials, depicts parts of Antarctica free of ice, a condition not seen for over 6,000 years. How could such knowledge have existed, unless it was inherited from a pre-Ice Age culture with global awareness and astronomical precision? Yet, just as the ancients rose, they fell. Not because they lacked power, but perhaps because they misused it, or because external forces feared what humanity might become if fully awakened. This brings us to the veil, the great forgetting. A rupture not only in history but in consciousness itself. And we, the modern inheritors of this fractured legacy, walk among the remnants, blind to their meaning, yet drawn to them with inexplicable fascination. Why do these ancient sites stir something in us? Why do we feel chills in sacred temples, or an unexplainable reverence before giant stone heads, spirals, and sun disks? Perhaps because something within us remembers. Not in the brain, but in the soul. A memory not of reading history, but of living it. And so the mystery deepens. Who were they, really? Where did they come from? And what is it that still lingers in the bones of the earth, waiting to be reawakened? As we peer further into the fog of forgotten epochs, we begin to encounter paradoxes, places where the known laws of history, physics, and chronology begin to fray. We find ourselves asking questions that orthodox narratives cannot answer. Why do so many megalithic sites around the world share similar construction methods, astronomical alignments, and mythological symbols, despite being separated by oceans and millennia? How did cultures with no known contact build pyramidal structures with mirrored cosmologies? Egypt's Giza, Mesoamerica's Teotihuacan, China's Xi'an pyramids, all reflecting Orion's belt or the precession of the equinoxes. There is a pattern emerging, not of cultural coincidence, but of a once global knowledge system, a spiritual technological matrix that spanned continents, perhaps predating even the rise of modern humans as we know them. Some researchers speak of Atlantis and Lemuria not merely as locations, but as epochs of consciousness, where humanity existed in higher vibrational states, capable of interacting with matter and energy in ways now lost to us. Their tools may not have been chisels and cranes, but harmonics, magnetism, and mind. The ancient Indian texts describe Vimanas, flying chariots propelled by mercury engines and guided by thought. The Dogon tribe of Mali knew about Sirius B, an invisible star only recently confirmed by modern telescopes. Aboriginal Dreamtime stories contain maps of the stars so precise, they rival current astronomical charts. Again and again, we see that myth, when viewed through a symbolic lens, becomes a repository of encoded knowledge, not primitive fantasy. And what of the survivors? After each great collapse, whether mythic or historical, we find pockets of sacred knowledge carried forward in mystery schools, in initiatory traditions, and in stone. The Egyptian mystery schools preserved geometry, frequency, and the science of the soul. The Druids held oral records of starborn knowledge. In Tibet, monks meditate inside mandalas that mirror ancient city grids, suggesting that sacred architecture is more than design, it's a map of the cosmos and a path to inner enlightenment. Even more fascinating is the concept of the Akashic records, spoken of in Vedic and Theosophical traditions. This cosmic archive is said to store the memory of all that ever was and will be, a kind of spiritual data field accessible not through technology, but through deep consciousness. What if the ancients didn't write their history in books, but embedded it within the earth, within the symbols, and within our very DNA? This brings us to a radical possibility, that the remains of these super-civilizations are not just scattered across landscapes, but also encoded within us. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, a deep well of archetypal memory we all share. What if this unconscious contains not just psychological blueprints, but ancestral memory, the spiritual muscle memory of ancient beings who once walked in harmony with stars and soil? And so we stand at the edge of an even deeper mystery. Were these civilizations human as we understand it, or something more? Were they Homo sapiens, or a parallel branch, Homo luminous, beings of light, straddling the border between material and ethereal? Some channeled texts speak of star ancestors, or sky teachers, who seeded humanity with divine knowledge before withdrawing behind the veil of myth. Could it be that the ancient gods were not gods in the divine sense, but advanced beings, part of a multidimensional ecology of consciousness, now hidden from our view? These ideas challenge not only our history books, but our entire worldview. They ask us to reframe evolution, not as a linear progression from cavemen to spacemen, but as a cyclical spiral, where knowledge is gained, lost, and reborn. Where the fall of each age is also the seeding of the next. And perhaps, that is where we find ourselves now, on the precipice of remembering. As the planet undergoes rapid change, climate upheaval, societal shifts, spiritual awakening, we may be reenacting a pattern as old as time. A time of collapse, yes, but also of re-emergence. The ancients knew that death was not the end, it was a passage. And perhaps Earth's forgotten super-civilization did not disappear, but merely stepped aside, leaving breadcrumbs in stone and symbol, waiting for us to become ready. Because the real question is not if they existed. The real question is, what happens when we remember who we truly are? So then, what do we do with this revelation? How do we bridge the ancient past with the present moment? The rediscovery of a lost supercivilization is not just a historical curiosity, it's a call to remember ourselves, to reawaken dormant capacities of the soul and step into the deeper currents of consciousness that once guided humanity like an invisible compass. This isn't about reconstructing old cities or reviving forgotten rituals for spectacle's sake. It's about reclaiming a way of being, a sacred mode of living in resonance with nature, cosmos, and spirit. The ancients lived by principles we have nearly forgotten. One of the most foundational was the law of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. If we are truly to walk the path of the ancients, not as archaeologists, but as initiates, then we must begin with the inner world. The temples were not only built of stone. They were reflections of inner sanctuaries, blueprints for the architecture of the soul. To rebuild what was lost, we must first rebuild the sacred center within. Begin with stillness. The ancient priests, monks, and sages all practiced some form of inner silence. In the quiet, we begin to tune ourselves back to the earth's frequency. Try sitting in meditation, not to clear your mind in the modern sense, but to listen. Visualize your spine as a pillar, your body as a temple, and your breath as sacred wind moving through its corridors. Just 15 minutes a day of true stillness begins to reattune the nervous system to the natural harmonics once known by those who walked among pyramids and stars. Next, work with geometry and sound. These were not decorative to the ancients, they were tools of transformation. Use mantras and sound frequencies that align with the Earth's Schumann resonance, 7.83 Hz, or the solfeggio tones that resonate with the chakras. Place sacred symbols, like the flower of life, the Sri Yantra, or the golden spiral, on your altar or near your bed. These symbols communicate with the subconscious and begin to awaken forgotten codes within your own energetic body. Reconnect with nature not as a background to your life, but as a living intelligence. Walk barefoot on the earth. Pay attention to the cycles of the moon. Plant something, no matter how small, and bless it with intention. The ancients believed that everything was alive, imbued with consciousness, and that communion with nature was a form of worship. By returning to this reverence, you begin to align your life with the rhythms of a greater harmony. Dream work, too, was sacred. In many ancient cultures, dreams were portals to the higher realms, the Akashic records, the underworld of wisdom, and the domains of ancestral memory. Keep a dream journal. Set intentions before sleep to connect with your ancient lineage, or to be shown symbols and guidance from the deeper currents of your soul. Often, the first signs of reconnection with ancient wisdom come not in waking life, but in the dream time. Another powerful practice is grid awareness. The earth was understood by the ancients to have energy lines, ley lines, song lines, dragon lines, that formed a planetary meridian system. Sacred sites were placed at the intersections of these lines. You can locate a major ley line near your region and visit it, or simply meditate with the awareness that you are standing upon a living lattice of energy. You don't need to travel to ancient temples to feel this connection. You can activate sacred space wherever you are by aligning your mind, breath, and intention. Perhaps most important of all is to live with sacred purpose. The ancients saw life not as random, but as part of a larger cosmological dance. Every person was born with a unique frequency, a soul song, and part of their initiation into adulthood was to discover that frequency and express it. Ask yourself, what stirs your soul? What creates awe in your heart? What brings stillness to your mind? Follow those things. They are reminders, threads leading you back to your origin. This is the beginning of reinitiating yourself into the great mystery. The rituals and wisdom of the past were never about escaping life, but elevating it. When you begin to walk this path, you find yourself more attuned to synchronicity, more present in your daily actions, more clear in your purpose. You become a living temple, a bridge between the stars and the soil. And yes, there will be resistance. The modern world is not built to support sacred living. Distraction, skepticism, even fear may arise. But that is part of the process. All initiates must walk through the threshold of forgetting in order to reclaim the light. Begin gently. Honor your intuition. Create sacred moments in your day. Light a candle with intention. Speak a prayer to the earth. Breathe with reverence. You are not just remembering history. You are remembering yourself. The ancient ones left their knowledge in stone and symbol, but they also left it in you. It was never truly lost, only waiting. And so we arrive at the edge of the known, where the maps end, where the textbooks fall silent, and where only whispers remain. Whispers of a civilization not buried by time, but by forgetfulness. A culture not merely of stone and tools, but of vibration, vision, and deep alignment with the soul of the earth itself. What if the pyramids are not just tombs, but transmitters? What if myths are not mere stories, but encrypted messages left by ancestors who walked between worlds? What if the ruins we find are not remnants of the past, but blueprints for a future we are only beginning to remember? We began with a question: has Earth's lost supercivilization been found? But perhaps the answer is more complex than discovery. Perhaps it is not something to be found in the outer world, but something that must be reawakened within us. The temples, the symbols, the alignments, all of them point inward as much as they do outward. They beckon us to look not only to ancient ruins, but to the sacred ruins within our own consciousness, waiting to be rebuilt into living cathedrals of remembrance. This knowledge was never meant to be hoarded or hidden. It was placed in stone and star, woven into song and symbol, encoded in the bloodline of the earth herself. And now, in a time when chaos surges and illusions crumble, the past begins to stir. The veil is thinning. You feel it. A quickening. A calling. A deep pulse rising from the roots of your being, asking you to look beyond the veil of modern life, to remember who you were before the forgetting. You are the descendant of starwalkers and earth whisperers. The legacy of a civilization that did not vanish, but transmuted. A civilization that knew how to live in harmony with spirit and soil, that saw no separation between science and soul, that understood life as sacred geometry in motion. That memory is rising now, not as fantasy, but as invitation. So I ask you, what are you going to do with this knowing? Will you turn away and bury it again beneath the noise of daily life? Or will you honor it, nurture it, awaken it, and let it transform you from the inside out? Because the truth is not just that the lost civilization has been found. The truth is far more electrifying. It has been waiting for you to remember. If this message resonated, if something ancient stirred in your spirit, then share this journey. Comment your thoughts, your dreams, your questions. Let's not merely explore these mysteries alone, but rebuild what was lost, together. Because this is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of your return.